Hey guys, it's Chris and welcome to Live Life Outdoors. So in this video I'm going to be showing you how to mount a scope onto your rifle. It's basically going to be following me mount this Vortex PST on a long-range rifle build of mine. For those of you who haven't seen the series I'm doing on that rifle, I'll actually put a link in the description below so that way you can see the project and how it's progressing. The main reason why I wanted to do this video is kind of just to show you guys how I like to mount the scope, but also because I just barely bought the Wheeler Engineering scope mounting kit combo. I bought it at Cabela's. It was on sale, reasonable price. The main reason why I wanted it is I wanted to just mount my own scopes. I used to take it somewhere, and some places would charge. Sometimes if you bought the scope, they'd put it in there for you. And the last time I did that, I just wasn't too happy with the eye relief that they put on there for me. So I had to go back, and it was just a whole ordeal. And because I'm going to be doing different scopes on different guns and mounting them and taking them off and adjusting them and things like that, I figured, you know what, it's time I just do it myself. So I've done it. I've really enjoyed it, and so I want to make sure I got this kit because I wanted to make sure I could lap my rings. And that's the main thing I liked about this kit is it comes with the alignment bars, lapping bar. Comes with a fat wrench so you can actually torque down your screws and things to the proper spec. So I mean, a lot of good reasons, and I just wanted to show you how I like to do it with this kit. The main complaint I had with the kit is the levels that came with it. They weren't that high of quality, as you'll hear me kind of discuss a little bit in the video. So also on sale, fortunately, I was able to get the professional reticle leveling system. And it's just basically nicer levels that actually attach onto the gun a lot better. So you'll see how to use those as well. I'm not affiliated with Wheeler or Cabela's. These are just products that I bought that I found to be extremely useful. So I wanted to make sure that if any of you guys were looking to buy it or try it out yourself, you'd be able to see how easy it really can be. It's one of those intimidating things where people think, oh man, it's going to be so hard to do my own scope and to get it lined up and to level the reticle and things. It's really not that bad, so I wanted to show you how that's done. So I hope you enjoy. So obviously the first step is to get the bottom of your scope rings mounted onto your rail or your mounting brackets. Now, one cool tip I want to show you before we really get into it, these scope rings actually have a little bit of play in them inside the groove of the rail. As you can see, it goes back and forth there. In order to reduce as much impact that recoil has on your optics, you want to push this scope ring all the way to the front of the groove, and by the front I mean towards the end of the barrel. And by pushing it all the way towards that front, when the rifle recoils backwards, these already have a solid base, a solid block, if you will, to reduce these rings from slipping in any way. If, for example, they start coming loose, or if they just, if you have a really major recoil on your gun, you don't want these starting to slip because that'll affect obviously your optics, particularly your eye relief and so forth. So push these towards the front of that groove and you'll be a lot better off. So I'm going to go ahead and get this tightened and we'll move on from there. So you want to obviously get these torqued down to the correct torque. Now the nice thing about the kit is it does come with the Fat Max, the torque wrench, and so you want to consult your manufacturer's recommended torque poundage, and it's going to be in inch pounds, not foot pounds. So if you guys have your own torque wrenches at home, make sure that they are in inch pounds, otherwise you're really going to damage your stuff. Because 20 inch pounds is not the same as 20 foot pounds. So we're going to get that torque down. And you heard that click there, one more for good measure. And now I know that that's torqued. Now what we want to do is make sure that the alignment is going to be correct. Now what I mean by alignment is, with these being aluminum, these are the Vortex rings, and with as wide as they are, you want to make sure that your rings have as much surface area contact with your scope as possible. I've seen a lot of videos, a lot of examples where you know, there's just a little bit out of tolerance or something where just the front edge of the ring or maybe this front corner or back corner actually makes contact. One video showed that only about 25% of the surface area here was making contact with your scope. That's obviously not good because you want as much surface area contacting the scope to hold it securely in place, but also if you have a little bit more surface area in the front or back or corner or what have you, and you tighten that down, it can actually damage or dent your scope or put too much pressure in a very small area to actually stop the adjustments from being made inside of the scope, your elevation, windage, and so forth. The actual mechanics of the scope can be pinched off. So to get that done, the kit came with these alignment bars. And what you do here is you put them in your scope rings and you get them to where they're just about to contact, and at that point should be about midway in your receiver or where the shell actually ejects the cartridge, and you want to get them extremely close but not touching. The closer they are, the more obvious or apparent any misalignment is going to be. So once you get them to that point, you can put the tops on to your rings, and you want to tighten them down. You obviously don't want to tighten them all the way, but get them pretty close to where it's pretending as if your scope were these alignment bars. So that way once they're tightened down, these points are coming together, and if it's out of alignment, you know, you'll see some either horizontal alignment issues, vertical alignment issues. That's the nice thing, is these are ground down to such a fine point you can see it any which way, any part of these rings that's not going to be in alignment that can cause you problems with your scope. So I'm going to get these tops of the rings tightened down and we'll take a look at where we're at. Okay, so I got the tops of the rings put on. As you can see, the alignment bars are extremely close to being in contact, but they are not touching. Now, as you can see, when you zoom in, these are actually dang near perfect when it comes to alignment. And my friend is extremely particular when it comes to his weapons, and so I'm almost certain that he lapped these before he Cerakoted the rings. So funny enough, I do not have to lap this setup at all, which is good, but I'm still going to show you basically what the process is so that way you can know for your own information. But I checked both the horizontal alignment this way and then the vertical alignment up and down, and those rings are dang near perfect. So fortunately I don't have to worry about it, but I'm still going to show you the process so that way you know, but you can see what to look for. Okay, so now what you're going to do if you were to lap this, if these were out of alignment, you'd loosen all of the screws just enough that you can slide the alignment bars out. And once you've got those out, you're going to take your lapping bar, which is basically the solid piece that comes in the kit, and you're going to take the lapping compound as well. As you can see, it's 220 grit. It's just a little bit of a paste. You just put it on your finger and you apply it to both halves, the top and the bottom of the rings. And you get a fairly decent amount on there, not too much, but certainly enough to get it to work. And then you slide your lap bar inside of the scope rings and you screw in the handle. Now this is one way of doing it, the way I personally prefer, because that way you kind of get to feel the tension and feel how it's going. So you want to tighten these down just a teeny tiny bit so you can get the compound in there sanding down, basically removing small tiny bits of material. And you're going to rotate this both side to side as well as front and back. So you're basically going to be doing like this circular shape with the handle to make sure you're getting the maximum effect without putting just straight back and forth and getting grooves, or straight back and side to side and getting grooves that way. But you want to keep it constantly moving and removing a little bit of material. Now as you progress, you can tighten these down, the tops of the rings, a little bit more to make sure that you're getting the high spots knocked down. But one thing you need really make sure you do is check the alignment periodically. Unfortunately, it's kind of lengthy because what you're going to have to do is take the handle back off, pull the alignment, or excuse me, the lapping bar out, clean up all the lapping compound that's inside the rings, making sure that it's all cleaned up and looking good, and you put your alignment bars back in and check to see your progress. Do this as much as possible because you don't want to remove too much material, but get it to where those points are just about perfect, with as much as you want, but obviously you want them as close to perfect as possible. And if needs be, repeat the process. Now, if you don't like doing it by hand, the kit does include this flex bit, and what essentially that does is it screws into the end of your lapping bar, and you can actually put it on your drill, so that way you can be moving the lapping bar in and out while the drill is slowly spinning. So you still get that side to side and front to back movement, but it is your drill doing the work. Okay, so once you've got that to where you're comfortable with where the lapping is and the alignment is, then you can actually put your scope in the bottom rings here. Now your next step is going to be figuring out your eye relief, or basically the distance from the eye, your eye when you're shooting, to the back of the scope, the optic. And one of the easiest ways to do that is you figure out, are you going to be shooting most of the time prone, laying down? Are you going to be doing it from a bench or sitting? Or are you going to be standing up while shooting? You got to figure out what the majority of your shooting is going to be in what position. And you get in that position. Now for me personally, it's going to be prone, so I laid down and I got it set up as if I was getting ready to shoot. And it's easier if you do it with two people, although I did it by myself. But what you do is you start with the scope pretty far forward, because you don't want to start too far back, because if you get it to where it's too far back and you think you like where it's at, the recoil of the gun is going to obviously cause the scope to hit your eye. And so what I did is I started with it all the way forward as far as the adjustment ring is going to let me go in relation to the receiver and the back of the receiver. And I just started slowly moving it backward until, boom, I found the perfect place where everything was in focus. There was no scope shadow. Everything looked perfect, so I knew that was going to be my optimal eye relief. I checked a few times, basically lifted my head up, put it back down on the rest, several times, making sure that it wasn't just a fluke. So I went ahead and just made a little reference mark with a pencil that's barely noticeable, but I know where it is, so I look for it, so I know where that's going to be in relationship to the rings. So once you get your eye relief figured out, your next step is essentially to get everything leveled up, because you want your level to be, or excuse me, you want your reticle to be perfectly level, because especially if you're shooting at distance and your crosshairs are not perfectly level to the receiver, perfectly parallel and perpendicular, then you're going to have trouble shooting at longer distances. Your point of impact is going to start to wander, because that's where the scope is telling you to put it. So you want to get yourself a good set of levels. The kit that I had, the scope mounting kit from Wheeler, it came with their what they call the level. It's basically a plastic level that you stick inside the receiver. To be honest, didn't really seem too impressed. I know that they had a few negative reviews on the quality and the calibration. It just wasn't going to be good. But they did have what they call their professional leveling kit, and it comes with a barrel clamp with a level on it, and of course a reference level, this one here. So this one had phenomenal reviews, so I went ahead and purchased it, and I was going to be using it today because it just, everybody was raving about it. So you want to find yourself a flat part of the receiver. If your receiver does not have a flat part, you can use your rail or your mounts for your scope. I've heard of people also using the bottom half of the scope rings. I don't like to use those as much because they're not as reliable. There can be some variations, and that is basically one of your least reliable sources. So fortunately, my Savage does have a spot that is perfectly flat on the back of the receiver. This has a little magnet on there, so what essentially you're going to do is make sure your receiver is perfectly level, and you do that by, when you put this on there, you twist your gun to get that bubble obviously perfectly aligned with the lines and the level. Once you get that, then you know that your receiver is level. And then you put on the barrel clamp, and I'll show you how to do that here in a moment. And one of the first things you want to do is this adjustment screw here. Position that to where this top half of the level and this part of the level here, these two sections, are parallel. Because if you've got that tightened way down, you can see I got a bigger gap here than there. That's going to limit my adjustment. But if I make sure that those are more parallel to one another, about there, then I have maximum adjustment up and down in this area. So you start there. Next, these release, or at least this side releases, so you can open it up nice and wide, and you slide that on your barrel. So you get that in position there, and you just tighten these down. You kind of want to make sure that this is even as you can, but secure it pretty tight in there. It's got this nice rubbery gasket material here that keeps it nice and secure, because you do not want this bumped once you get it aligned. And what this is basically going to do is allow you to index the receiver with the barrel. These two, you want your receiver level, reference level, to match this level. And what that's doing is allowing you to clamp this right into position, so you know if this is level, you know your receiver's level, because you know, in case you bump it or move it, you know that this is locked in. That's essentially what you're going to be doing. Okay, so I went ahead and made sure that the receiver is level with the reference level, and now not sure if you can see this, but this is a little bit out. So all you do is you just twist this adjustment screw ever so slightly until you see that that barrel, or at least that clamp, is perfectly leveled as well, which is right there. So now that this is level and the receiver reference level is level, I know that this is locked in. Because I was touching it, I'm going to double check. And you want to double check 2 or 3 times, making sure that they're both reading exactly the same. Once you do that, the reference level can then be put on the scope, which I'm going to do here in a minute, and we'll level out that scope. Okay, you can see with the setup here, I got the scope put on, and I just basically set those top rings on there. I did not tighten these screws in hardly at all. All I wanted to do was just not let this freely spin, but still be able to be loose enough that I could manually spin it to level it out. Now, more often than not, the elevation knob here is going to be flat. And if it is, then you're in luck, because all you do is you take that level there and you put it on top, and then you match this level with your, this is the reference level, and then you match it to the level that's clamped onto your barrel. Because you know that that's on to the receiver, because we basically index them to be exactly the same. So when that's level and this is level, you know that it's level with your receiver. So it's kind of a nifty little setup. I really like this kit. Now the nice thing is, with the flat part being on the receiver, I was actually able to take that reference level and double check it one more time on the receiver in relation to the scope, and it was still the same. So all in all, that's going to be done. I'm going to call that level. I'm going to call it complete. Now, kind of a nifty bit of advice that Vortex actually had in their owner's manual is they said to torque these screws down, but they said to do it dry. And what I mean by that is they said not to use any Loctite on these screws. I use Loctite when I put the rail onto the receiver, the Picatinny rail. But these screws, they say if you put Loctite on them, while it's not cured, it is a liquid. Therefore, it acts as a lubricant. So if you were to torque this dry, at, in this case, 18 inch-pounds dry, then you know that you have an 18 inch-pound torque. If you were to add a little lubricant, in that case Loctite, that's still in its liquid state, and you torque that down, it actually may over torque it. So in their owner's manual, Vortex said do 18 inch-pound torques on these screws and do not use Loctite. So I'm not going to. Now I wanted to show you this as well. As you're tightening these, in order to prevent any rotation of that scope whatsoever, when you're tightening them, you want to do it in a star shape, much like if you were going to be changing a tire. So you give this back corner a half turn, then you move opposite that screw, so that is the back right corner. So I want to go to the front left corner and give that a half turn as well. Now I go to the front right corner, give that a half a turn, and now I go to the back left corner and give that a half of a turn, and then I do the right middle and then the left middle, and then you do that with the front ring as well. Now the other thing I wanted to mention as well, while you're doing this, is you want to keep the top half and bottom half of these scope rings equidistance apart. These are not meant to touch, the top and bottom parts of the rings. They're just meant to clamp down on the scope, so they won't touch. So on these sides you want an equal gap. If this is touching on this side and this is open, then you're going to have trouble. It's not going to be giving it equal pressure, and as you're torquing it down, it might cause the scope to rotate. So do the star shape, keep these gaps on both sides equal, and you should have a great scope that's mounted well for great accuracy and precision. See, there you have it. It's really not that bad. A little bit of patience, you can do a great job, and because obviously it's your equipment and your gun, you can do the level of care that you would want someone else to do that they may actually not if you take it somewhere. So it's not too bad at all, and I hope it works well for you. Since I've already put the rifle on, I've actually gone out and shot it, and I'm very happy with the results. Everything lined up just the way I wanted it. Now, if you haven't already, be sure to check out my other videos. I got some fun projects in the works. And also, if you haven't already, be sure to like and subscribe, because it helps me greatly, and it helps me to be able to grow the channel. But most importantly, don't forget to live life outdoors.